Welcome, everyone. Ready to dive into a really complex topic.
I am. Should be a good one.
Public perception of the LGBTQ plus community. Sensitive, for sure. So, no endorsements here, okay? Just trying to understand one perspective.
Yeah, like mapping unfamiliar territory, seeing how different folks navigate it.
Exactly. So, first thing that jumps out is this idea of toxicity,
Oh,
online LGBTQ plus spaces,
yeah.
specifically. It's interesting, right? Fighting for acceptance, but also these accusations of aggression, especially toward differing views.
Yeah, a lot of tension there. And, some people use their identity almost like a weapon, shutting down conversations instead of, actually engaging.
Like having the moral high ground becomes the barrier. Makes you wonder, is that really helping the cause? Or
Yeah.
just creating more division?
Huge question, right? If understanding and acceptance is the goal, maybe those tactics backfire, push people away instead of bringing them closer.
And then this whole thing about labels gets even more complex. If you identify with a group, are you responsible for everyone in it, even if you don't agree with them?
It's a real dilemma. Think about it. We all have labels. Nationality, religion, even like sports fans. Sometimes people in those groups do things that are just awful. Does that mean we're responsible?
It's like a constant negotiation. Where does individual responsibility end and group responsibility begin?
Yeah.
And this viewpoint we're looking at, they've really struggled with that, especially with the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, and it leads to this idea of hypocrisy within the community. Like they should be the most tolerant, right? Accepting everyone, even those who oppose them.
But, I mean, is that even realistic? We're all human. Emotions get heated, especially about things we care about.
For sure, and that's where it gets really nuanced, right? Demanding respect doesn't automatically earn it. Maybe showing tolerance, even when it's tough, is how you actually change minds.
That's a challenge for everyone, not just the LGBTQ plus community, balancing, advocating for what you believe in, and being respectful of different views, especially when those views are hurtful, maybe even threatening.
Absolutely, a real balancing act. And this viewpoint, they think the LGBTQ plus community is struggling with it.
And a big part of that seems to be the bad apples thing. A few bad actors can really damage a whole group's image, even if most are good.
Yeah, they compare it to the furry community, actually, how they try to distance themselves from, problematic elements. Pretty bold comparison, but it brings up an interesting question. How much responsibility does a community have to, like, police its own?
And how do you do that without shutting down authentic expression? It's tough. Definitely something to keep unpacking.
That furry community comparison, it really highlights how groups deal with, perception and representation.
Right. You want to be inclusive, welcoming everyone, but also protect your image. Make sure a few people acting badly don't ruin it for everyone.
Exactly. And that's where it gets tricky. Who decides what's acceptable? Who gets to police that, especially online where things are so, like, decentralized?
Feels like walking a tightrope. Too much control, you get censorship. Too little, and harmful behavior flourishes, damages the whole community.
It is a dilemma. And this viewpoint we're looking at, they see a lack of accountability in the LGBTQ plus community. They see those bad apples and wonder why more isn't being done.
And it goes back to the labels and hypocrisy, right?
Yeah.
If you're claiming the moral high ground, you got to live up to it. Make sure your values are actually being practiced.
Exactly. It's not just calling out bad behavior, it's promoting the good stuff too. Yeah. Showing diversity, highlighting the positive contributions, emphasizing those core values, love, acceptance, equality.
Shifting the narrative
Huh?
away from negativity and conflict toward a more, well-rounded picture.
And that takes a lot of effort, education, definitely. Understanding the history, the struggles, but also the richness, the beauty.
Awareness too, right?
Yeah.
Making sure LGBTQ plus voices are heard. Their stories told authentically and respectfully.
And dialogue, for sure. Creating spaces for conversation, even with different views, learning to disagree without, demonizing each other, finding common ground.
And that brings us back to empathy. It's easy to get stuck in our own heads, but real understanding means seeing things from someone else's perspective.
Absolutely. Empathy doesn't mean you have to agree, It just means trying to understand where someone's coming from, how they got to their viewpoint.
Recognizing everyone's on their own journey. Change happens gradually through exposure to new ideas, through dialogue.
And sometimes the best way to change someone's mind is just to listen, really hear them, respond with compassion, not judgment.
So practically speaking, what can people do, both within and outside the LGBTQ plus community, to create a more positive, inclusive environment?
Well, I think it starts with looking inward. Am I being mindful of my language? Am I part of the problem or the solution? Am I perpetuating stereotypes or challenging them?
Taking responsibility.
Mm,
Recognizing we all shape the world around us. The language we use, the images we share, the stories we tell.
exactly. And it's not just what we say, it's what we don't say. Are we speaking up against injustice? Amplifying marginalized voices?
Mhm.
Using our platforms to promote understanding?
Being an ally. Standing with those, fighting for equality. And it doesn't have to be grand gestures. It can be educating yourself, listening to others, speaking up when you see prejudice.
Creating a culture of empathy, where people feel safe to be themselves without fear of judgment.
That's something we can all work towards, no matter what we believe. We all benefit from the world where everyone feels seen, heard, valued.
Well said. It's about realizing we're in this together. We all want a world where everyone feels valued, respected, loved.
Now, I'm curious about the person behind this viewpoint. How have their experiences shaped their views on the LGBTQ plus community?
Good point. So something we'll definitely dig into next time.
We've covered a lot, responsibility, hypocrisy, perceptions of the LGBTQ plus community, but it's just one viewpoint, right? Everyone's experiences are different.
Exactly. Hearing those individual stories is so important. Understanding how personal encounters shape those broader views.
And this person, they felt like they actually encountered more conflict with the LGBTQ plus community than any other. Yeah, and they connect that to like the community's recent rise in acceptance, the visibility,
Mhm.
especially online. Some folks may be feeling emboldened, using their identity to shut down any disagreement.
Like they're untouchable because of who they are.
Right. Any criticism, even if it's well-intentioned, just gets labeled as bigotry or homophobia. No real conversation can happen.
That moral high ground, again,
Mm.
can't be questioned, can't be challenged. Dialogue shuts down completely.
And this actually reflects a bigger issue, don't you think?
Mhm.
Not just within the LGBTQ plus community. It's like cancel culture, wanting to protect marginalized groups, but also protect free speech, open dialogue.
A very, very tricky balance. We want everyone to feel safe, respected, no hate speech, but we also don't want people afraid to speak their minds, to ask questions.
And this individual felt like the LGBTQ plus community, in fighting oppression, may have gone too far in silencing dissent, pushing away people who might actually be open to learning.
It definitely makes you think. Challenges us all, no matter what we believe, to really examine how we talk about social justice and equality. If we want a more just world, we got to have those tough conversations, even when they're uncomfortable.
And that's where empathy comes in. Stepping outside our own perspectives, truly listening, even when we disagree. Sometimes, changing someone's mind isn't about arguing, it's about understanding, showing compassion.
Couldn't agree more. And recognizing we're all learning, we're all growing, nobody's perfect, we all mess up sometimes, but being open-minded, listening to each other, learning from each other, that's how we create a world where everyone feels valued, seen, heard for who they are.
A world worth striving for.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway is nuanced thinking, no generalizations, recognizing the diversity of opinions within any group, and having those tough conversations with empathy, with an open heart.
Beautifully put. Because those conversations, those connections, that's how we build understanding. That's how we create a more just world for everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hope it got you thinking. Keep exploring these complex, important issues. We'll see you next time.